My name is Till and this is Till Talk. All interviews are about the spiritual path, self-discovery, meditation and consciousness. Today, my guest will be Alexandre. He used to be my yoga teacher when I was doing my Bachelor in the Netherlands. In the interview, we talk about the different branches of yoga and the connection to the Bhagavad Gita.
If you don't have this devotion and this real deep connection with God, you will also not achieve the final. And in the end, the goal of the yoga, put quite literally from the book, is to escape the cycle of life and death, and not to be reborn again, but to go to the abode of God, and that your soul, which is the true you, is reunited with the king soul, which is the soul of God, and then you are really reunited, and you don't have to suffer again in the cycle of death and rebirth.
Let's talk till tomorrow. Hey Alexandre, it's so nice to see you again, because I didn't see you for quite a while. I think the last time was, at least 2 years ago, maybe even more. And yeah, it's nice to see you. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fine, thank you. Everything is cool. Well, like with the COVID and stuff, I had to close the studio. It didn't work out so much anymore. But now I give classes to another yoga studio, and it's actually pretty fine like this. Having a good time, just teaching classes and not having to worry about administration or this kind of stuff. So it's all good.
Maybe for the people that are listening to us, actually, Alexandre was my yoga teacher in the past when I was in the Netherlands, and I used to study there. And this is how I got to know him. And yeah, so right now you are doing the yoga classes as a full-time job?
No, I do it now part-time. And next to that, I work as a programmer for an internet company.
Okay, that's also interesting.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting world also, yes.
Do you have a cat or a dog on your knees?
Cat.
A cat.
Her name is Huli. Not so much contrast with my black sweater, but
yeah, I wasn't sure.
It's a cat. She's quite old now, 15 years old, and she just likes to sit on our lap. It's fine.
Okay. For the people that are listening to us, I mean, most of them probably don't know you. Could you just give them a brief overview about yourself, like your name, who you are, where you're living right now, and what you are doing?
Yeah, sure. My name is Alexandre. I'm originally from France, but I've been living in the Netherlands for the past 15 years at least, in the city of Groningen. 7 to 8 years ago, I started practicing yoga, and after that, started to roll into teaching pretty fast. So I've been teaching now for also the most part of 7 years. Like I mentioned just a second ago, now I used to do full-time and have my own studio for the yoga, but now I also work for an internet company, and I do the front end as a developer, a programmer. And married, have 3 children, a cat, and yeah, that's about it, I guess. And I'm 39 years old, by the way. Also.
39 years old. Yeah, I was always wondering when I went to your classes, and I never really asked about your age. So good to know.
39.
I think I am probably most interested about the yoga part. Could you just tell me how you got into yoga?
Yeah, I think like for most people, it started with like the physical part of yoga. I really liked to do some sports before, but I was looking for something else at some point, and then I started to thought yoga might be an interesting thing to do. And my first yoga classes were not really a success. I was to a place where I was a little bit more like as some people may have set views about yoga being for only for women, being very soft, and it turned out to be a bit like that. For example, one of the instructions during the class were to relax your uterus, which yeah, which got me a bit confused. I was like, that's a bit weird. But I really liked back then all the breathing exercises also, and the deep stretches still managed to get a bit peace and quiet in my body. But then a colleague of mine who was practicing yoga somewhere else, she told me that I should come with her to check power yoga. And so when I went there, I was like, oh my God, been sweating as much as possible, and with the breathing exercises and the end lying in shavasana and the final relaxation, I knew that was exactly what I was looking for. And yeah, I kind of never stopped after that.
And you immediately started like doing like a traineeship or something, or how long did it take?
Well, after a couple of months, I think it was like 3 or 4 months since I started in the power yoga studio, that one of the teacher who was giving classes there left to go to India, and I just asked the owner if maybe she could show me a couple of things, and I wouldn't mind taking over the classes of the teacher that was leaving. And basically, she just gave me more choreography. She was like, okay, she trained me for a couple of weeks, and every day just practicing the same sequence. And at one point, I could do it on my own, and then I was just standing in front of the class and not really knowing what I was doing, but just just being in front of the class and doing some poses and having people follow along. And then I started to get really interested in that. So I started to get myself into teacher training, and I first learned about power yoga. And after that, I went.
Was this in the Netherlands or in France?
Yeah, that was in the Netherlands. I was in the Netherlands. Yeah. In France, I never practiced yoga. It's just been like since like 7 or 8 years ago that I started to get into it. So I got this. There's this big. It's a bit of a big name. It's called the ALO in the Netherlands, and they usually do fitness training for trainers and this kind of thing. They also back then they just had added a few yoga modules. So I started with the power yoga level 1 and then level 2. Then I also followed the yin yoga module, and I still was not totally satisfied because yoga is, you just keep on learning all the time. That's a great thing about it. And I decided to enroll for another on location teacher training in the Netherlands at Ahanta, and that was a 4-week immersion. So we were living there with a group of 30 people the first time, just for 4 weeks, living together, eating together, practicing and learning about yoga from teachers coming from India, so who had practiced that for their whole life, and they were they're here in the Netherlands also to do the teacher trainings. And I did what's called the 200 hours teacher training, and after that I went for another 4 weeks for the 300 hours.
Well, that sounds very intense.
Yeah, well, it was over a course of a couple of years, of course.
But I think it's kind of interesting if you like really live with a lot of people together for a while, like eat with them, practice with them, like actually doing everything together. And before, I guess you've never did anything like this, right?
No, that was really specific for yoga indeed. And it was a good thing, it's like it's in the south of the Netherlands, near Arnhem, and also in the middle of the countryside. And it's just a big, I think it was an old farm or something. And the teachers also live there in their own house. And there's the whole building to accommodate all the students that come. And it's a nice, simple life. It's not It's not India, even though they also have an ashram in India where they do the same thing, so you can choose. But because I just had my first child when I started this training, I thought it would be nicer to stay in the Netherlands. And it's very simple, there is no TV. You are allowed to have your phone in your own room, and there is warm water and light, of course. I used to think to say like, oh, there is no, it's very basic. And somebody was like, oh my God, you don't even have warm water. And then I realized how you take things for granted sometimes. And it's actually very comfortable with a warm bed and warm water and warm food also. And it's just no distractions, let's say.
Yeah. Nice. And you said that you learned to teach yin yoga, at first power yoga, and then hatha yoga. Just for the people that are listening that are maybe not into yoga, could you explain what is typical for those types?
Yeah, sure. The Hatha Yoga to start is a bit more what gets closest to the first idea of what physical part of yoga was meant to be. More gentle poses to hold with a steady breath and make them comfortable. The Power Yoga is a little bit more a sporty kind of yoga, let's say, where you really moving through the poses and a bit of a higher tempo and including a bit more exercises also to develop strength and stability. And the yin yoga is exactly the opposite, where you can just lie down in a pose for 5 to 15 minutes and just completely release into your body. So this would be like the main differences.
Yeah, and I also tried out all of them when I was still in Groningen, but mostly I was following the Hatha classes, which I actually really enjoyed. It was actually kind of interesting because when I started doing yoga, I mean, you were my first teacher just before I had my mother, who's also a yoga teacher, and she just taught me the basics. Sun salutation, that I kind of knew what I need to do before I go to my first classes. And I was just looking into all the types of yoga. And then I was like, I also read about Kundalini yoga, and I was like, I want to do this. It sounds pretty interesting. But when I tried it in Groningen, I just found one place, but I didn't really enjoy it. But also not because of the style, but more the teacher. And then I just tried out different things, and I ended up at your place. And I thought, okay, I think it's good to start with Hatha yoga. And if I still want to try out something else later, I can do it. Yeah, and this is how I actually ended up at your place. And I actually really enjoyed it because, I don't know, I realized it's not only about the type of yoga, but also about the teacher, if it works out for you and his program. And yeah, this was actually really nice for me. And I actually also learned so much in the first, I think, weeks and months when I started doing yoga.
Uh, Thank you for the compliment. I'm glad you enjoy the classes. And I think it works like that for most things. And I think whenever you go somewhere, and especially in a group where there's somebody who's like standing in front of a group, and maybe the subject can be very nice, but it's just like some people connect and some people don't connect together, and there is no connection. The stuff has to be really, really good for you to come back, I guess. And that's the same with everything. And that's one thing about yoga, like you can be aware of this kind of things, and it's a good way to let go sometimes. Sometimes this connection is not there, and you can let go and you move on. And sometimes you find this connection, and then it's a good place to be, but it can take some time to find it.
Yeah, I was actually quite happy that it worked out for me that easily. I mean, there are many yoga studios in Groningen, although it's not such a huge city. But I think afterwards, I've also had like different yoga teachers when I left Groningen. But I never really found another one where it was the same with you. I still had one in enlightened. It was like for uni sports, and they offered many different types of yoga. And at a certain point, there was an old guy, I don't know where he was from, but he offered Raja yoga. And this was also pretty good. And I think he was also a good teacher. But just afterwards, I realized, like when I saw other yoga classes, like it's not, always, how should I say, like a typical or normal that you go to one or two classes and then you meet someone right away where you're like, okay, I think that works out pretty well for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in general, what would you say? How would you define yoga? Because we talked about like some styles, but in general, do you have some kind of definition that you tell other people when they start doing yoga?
I do have a definition that I developed not that long ago, and I don't usually talk about it to people, especially not in a class. I've been reading the Bhagavad Gita for a while, and the message every time I read it becomes a bit more clear, and everything that I read about it, the yoga, what we call yoga here, especially in the West, is mostly the physical posture and the physical part of yoga, which actually, if you look back at the tradition, is a bit more like the tip of the iceberg. And in the end, even in the old texts, the physical position were almost completely absent, and it was just about finding a correct way to sit down and meditate. And in the end, uh, my conclusion and what I start to live more and more according to is that yoga is like the connection of finding your true self, getting rid of all the labels that are being put on your physical body since the moment that you were born in a physical body, and to get more this connection with what some people might call God or the divine or just a higher power, that kind of rules the universe. And of course, in the Bhagavad Gita, then would be Krishna, of course. Uh, so I also, at the moment, really take this image because it gives me something also to hold on to a bit when I try to wrap my thoughts around it. But and of course, the physical part is a good thing to practice. And because if you cannot sit down quietly because your body is feeling very nervous, that you're going to have trouble to find this state. Um, but it's not what it's about in the end. It's not about being strong or flexible or being able to do a handstand, but really just finding this connection, to get a bit more into devotion and kind of surrender to a higher power to connect with that.
And but you said that normally you don't tell people about this definition in the yoga studio right away, right?
That's true. I don't want to scare people off.
I always noticed when I took your classes after, I don't know, let's say maybe a month or two, that it really depends on, at least I had the feeling, what you take out of the classes. Maybe some people go there just for the stretching. Maybe some have some injuries or some issues. Some do it to become stronger, more flexible, health, what you said, spiritual reasons. Like it's so different, but it's kind of interesting because when you like did your classes, what you've talked about, it was always very, I would say, simple and not like talking about just spiritual stuff or anything. And I felt like for me, I could like, I don't know if learning is the right word, but could take a lot of stuff with me spiritually wise. But I feel like, I don't know, it was very open if you wanted to get something just for your body. I'm sure people got it at your class. If they wanted something else, they also got it, but without you needing to say like this in a specific way. Do you know what I mean?
I think I understand, and this is what I try to do really in the classes to, without trying to scare anybody away from the class, that make sure that everybody is welcome, and in the end, still finding also my own way to to really bring what I believe to be a bit more the essence of yoga, and yeah, it's I guess it makes teaching yoga also a bit of a craft to try to interweave this kind of bit more spiritual messages, but in just very small doses. So that can maybe sometimes like plant a seed, as we say, and that people maybe some people will totally pass next to it and don't even notice something has been mentioned, and some people will be just a little bit more receptive to it. But in the end, everybody is free to make their own thing about it, and that's what I like about yoga also. Like there is this absolutely talk about what we call God or the divine, but it's also managing in a way to not be a religion. And this is something that I like, where there is a message, and in the end, nobody's telling you you have to do this or that. It's uh, like the gurus, or and it's starting from the people who first were illuminated, just passed on their message, and some people were receptive to it, and some people not. But in the end, there's never been a yoga holy war. So of course, there was in books, but they usually more a war that's happening within each individual more than a real literal battlefield. My cat is trying to ruin my computer. Move away, please.
Yeah, and I think this was also something that I've noticed quite quickly, that it's like yoga is not really like a religion or a belief system. Like you get all those methods if you want, try them out and see how it works, and you can experience for yourself. And then what works, you can continue doing it, and if it doesn't work, then just leave it. This is kind of nice that you can figure it out for yourself.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and sometimes there is also, of course, the word of yoga has been used and for different religions from India and in the East in general, and there's been some dogmas happening creating from that, but it's usually been a corruption of the message. And like if you see the things with the castes in India, it's been brought into place by humans. It's not the message of the divine, and nobody is excluded from society in an ideal divine world.
Yeah. By the way, you've also talked about the Bhagavad Gita. I guess if I've understood it correctly, you've read it a couple of times, not just once, right? How was it for you, like reading it the first time and then maybe for a second or then a third?
Uh, the first time was maybe a bit confusing. Like there were some words and some ideas, concepts that were like totally strange to me and that I couldn't really relate to. Use of Sanskrit words also that were not really making too much sense. But once I did the 300-hour teacher training, the second time I went for 4 weeks. We had a part of the training that was also about the Bhagavad Gita, and then having to read it in parallel to the other philosophical classes that we were getting was really a good way to build a bit more of an understanding of what is meant in the book. And yeah, so the second time was during this training. I read it again, and then another time, and every now and then I'm now I'm also subscribed to a newsletter from I don't remember the name, but every day I receive in my mail in the morning a verse of the Bhagavad Gita to read with a commentary also on it to really keep it a bit fresh in my head also. But yeah, the second time started to make a bit more sense, and the third time I could really take things out that were working for me, and some concepts that I was also trying to put a bit more in a subtle way into my classes by telling things about. Well, you know, there are some concepts about um, like karma yoga, which is not the karma that we know. You know, if you do something bad will happen to you, but more like the karma yoga is doing your best when you do something, really give it your all, but also not be attached to the result of what you're doing. And this is something, it's probably the main thing that I took away from it, you know, like uh, when you expect something from what you do, usually you get disappointed. And if you really just do your best without thinking that you will get this or that in return for what you do, I don't know. It gives you a little, in the end, more satisfaction because you just know you did your best, and whatever the outcome is, then sometimes it's just out of your hands. And I thought it was a really good thing to practice in your daily life. You know, not just on your yoga mat, but with everything you do.
Yeah, and I think like when I got into yoga and when I started reading, I actually just read the Bhagavad Gita because you like said, yeah, just try it out. um, and I think like I actively try to practice karma yoga because like you don't need to take out your mat or anything. You can practice it at any moment, even right now if you want to. This was something where I was like, that's actually like a nice practice. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I personally I had the feeling that from those if I can call them like those 6 branches of yoga or types that are mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita, that the karma yoga, I always had the feeling that it was more like that they focused more on it in the Bhagavad Gita in comparison to some other styles.
Yes, yes, that's true. And I mean, in the end, the main point of the Bhagavad Gita would be the Bhakti yoga, the yoga of devotion. And this is also, but it's also related to the Karma yoga. Of course, everything is connected. But and the Karma yoga, and this is exactly what it means. You do your best, but don't expect anything because in the end, the result you don't decide. It's been decided by God. Whether you will fail or succeed in your endeavors, this is out of your hand, and all you can do is your best. This is then, and you will do that once you can really practice the Bhakti yoga. But when the part where the Karma yoga comes into play is as opposed to the Sanyasa yoga, where people really discharge all their worldly duties and they stop to work and start to wear the orange robes and go on the street. And that's what when he explains that some people do that, but not because they really found God and affection and they really can surrender to the divine, but just because they don't want this life. They don't want to go to work and they use it as an excuse. And this is actually, I read about it. There's an interesting article about how this fake or lost spiritual people wandering in India, just smoking opium or hashish all day, being completely lost because, and this is what he explains also in the Bhagavad Gita, if you completely give up your worldly duties, but you still don't have this real attachment to God and to the divine, then you lost everything. And at least when you do karma yoga, until you really find this connection where you can really let go of your worldly duties, you have to still go to work because everything is better than nothing. So even if you just do your work, and let's say even if you're a banker and your job is to make as much money as possible, you should do that. It's still better than ending up on the street and not having your worldly surroundings and also no spiritual connection and being completely lost.
Yeah, this is something that I also kind of enjoyed when I've heard that there are different methods. It's not just that there's this path of, I don't know if it's called self-renunciation or renunciation, or like that you don't need to go to the Himalayas or something, that you can just do it in your daily life and start with this. And I've also read a book by Swami Rama where he described that he just went into this path of going into the mountains and getting away from all worldly desires. But he also said like it really needs to work out for you. He also met many people where he could see like it didn't really work out. But when he saw people who were just like practicing their daily yoga and their normal daily life, and he saw that they got some really amazing, let's say, results out of it. So it's kind of surprising that you don't necessarily need to like say, okay, it's just about this practice and I need to sit down 10 hours a day and don't do anything else.
No, well, if you can do that, it's okay. I guess you will get some, but that's the thing. And lots of people, and that's also what is being described in the Bhagavad Gita with following the scriptures and all the rituals and doing sacrifices and all this kind of thing. Um, describes is just what you do bodily in your physical daily life, while your mind is still attached to the worldly pleasures, and this is where it can go wrong for people, and where it can be dangerous to have scriptures like that. And it's like there's this story also of the two brothers who are going out of their house to go for a reading of the Bhagavad Gita, or no, I think it's the Srimad Bhagavatam, another holy book, and a lecture. And on the way, there's a storm breaking, and they find a refuge in a little house. And it turns out that the house is a brothel. So they're like, "Oh my God!" The younger brother says, "Oh, we can't stay here. It's unholy." And the other one says, "Yeah, well, it's just going to be raining for a while, so we can just as well wait here until it's dry, and then we go again." And the younger brother just said no, and he goes away and goes to the lecture under the rain, while the other one stays in the brothel and waiting for the rain to pass. But what happens is that the brother staying at the brothel keeps on thinking, my brother is so devoted. Now he's reading easily, he's hearing the holy word, and what am I doing here? I should be ashamed. And in the meantime, the brother that is at the lecture thinks in his head, like, oh my God, I'm such a fool. My brother is having so much fun with all the ladies in the brothel. I should just go back there. And then they both go back and meet halfway, and they both get hit by the storm. And then there's the god of death who comes, takes the brother who was at the lecture. And then he says, oh, why do you take me? You should take my brother. I was the one at the lecture while you were staying at the brothel. And then what the god of death then says, yeah, but in your mind, you were at the brothel, while in his mind, your brother was at the lecture. And this is this is a bit of a okay, this is what you do with your mind and your true intention. That is what matters, and not the appearances and what you do with your physical body. It's something that really marked me a lot in this story.
Yeah, that's a really nice story. I actually never heard of it.
Yeah, it's it's quite ironic, but that's really how it works. And this is something with all. Every religion, they have their scandals happening, and you think these people pretending to be really holy and inside they're just lowly, or I don't know what to say, but not as holy as they might appear to be. And this is something that's very well explained in the book, I find. It's really your intention that matters, and if you just pretend, you'll be found out, and you will get it back on your plate eventually.
Yeah. It also reminds me a little bit of myself, because even when I got into spirituality a few years ago, it was like around the time when I joined your yoga classes and I started reading books. I also watched videos. I just projected my I don't know, my own picture of how a guru or an enlightened person, however you want to call it, should kind of look like. And I don't know, like I was just projecting it on it. And then later on, I also saw other people talking about the topic. And then, like, hearing that they should be liberated. And I was like, yeah, but we're just normal people. And like, it was also kind of confusing for me, like, to realize, yeah, okay, it's like at the end of the day that I was just projecting my own kind of images onto those people that were sitting on the, I don't know, always on a kind of higher, on a pedestal, putting them on the pedestal. But I don't know, like, could be anyone, you know, who has like a lot of wisdom.
It's true. It's true. I don't know if you know this movie also called Kumare. Uh, it was on Netflix a while ago. It's it's very funny, kind of. There is this is an American guy, and is Indian from origin, but he was just born and raised in America. And at one point, he decided to have a bit of a social experiment, and it went a bit out of hand eventually. But it just decided one time to start to wear orange robes, and put like a red dot between his brows, and come on as a holy man. And there are a couple of people who actually bought into this. But what he kept, and they were getting coached by him in a way. And every time he was just telling them, I am no guru, you are guru. And also putting on the Indian accent a bit, while he doesn't have one initially. But what he was doing, every time these people were coming to him, most of the time, the only advice he would give them was like, listen, if you would come to you with this issue, what would you say to yourself? And in the end, everybody, every time, just find their own solution by just putting themselves out of the perspective. And at the end, and they became really attached to him and what he means to them. But in the end, he does reveal that is, I tell you all the time, I am not a guru, but it's true, I am not. And then he just comes with his normal clothes, and some people get really, really upset and really mad at him also. And this is exactly what you said, like people, they have this image of what the guru should be and how he should look like, maybe. And in the end, the answers, they're already here, but it's nice to have somebody who shows us the way. And that's also another thing about the Bhagavad Gita. Again, everything comes back to this book eventually. It's like uh, you also don't follow a person. When you follow a guru, you don't follow the person of the guru, but you follow the ideal, the idea that is there. And this is something that people, and especially for us in the West, where we're used to materialistic and things that we can touch and see, and we have a preconceived idea of how things should be. This can be very dangerous. It's easy to fool. But when you really know that it's the idea that matters, you also can go maybe a little step closer to the truth, maybe.
Yeah. And when you talked about was it a movie or a series?
It's a movie. It's a movie.
A movie. I remembered. I've heard of it before. I think I saw a trailer or something at a certain point, and Yeah, I was like, when I saw this, I was like, I can imagine how this is going to end.
Yeah, and in the end, he was really not. Yeah, of course, he had the robes on, but he was not even trying as much to fool them. He was not making them pay or anything. It was just like he was always telling them, I am not the guru. You are the guru. And that's what really is always in the movie. And the people, they also had to need this and then need somebody to have the uniform.
Yeah. Um, by the way, I mean, you came back to the Bhagavad Gita and we talked about karma yoga and bhakti yoga. And did you say that that it's I don't know, that you started practicing bhakti yoga before karma yoga, or how did you mean that?
Oh, but um, I tried to practice it myself. Bhakti yoga, I'm still not good enough at it. But the karma yoga is something I try to do. And the thing with the karma yoga is, like I said, or what's in the book is that you do your best whenever you do anything that you do, without attachment to the result or the outcome of what you are doing. But so it could come before the Bhakti Yoga, but the Bhakti Yoga will also help you to realize that what you do is not for yourself in the end, it's just for the satisfaction of God. But if you don't believe in God, or if you don't have this devotion already or faith that's already in place, your karma yoga in the end is not going to bring you there. But the karma yoga, it's like, uh, I have three children, and even though it's not directly for God, if I make sure that they are healthy, well fed, happy, and everything is doing well, and that I do my best for that, in the end, it's fine. When I go to bed at night, I don't have to worry about, did I do my best? Did I do everything I could today? Or, it's also creating a bit of peace of mind for yourself.
Yeah, that's kind of a nice description. I like that. And the other types of yoga from those, from the ones that were mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita, one is also Hatha yoga, right? Or
I
is
think
there
it's
distinction?
yeah. I think the Ashtanga yoga is mentioned, but not. It's also again a difference between the Ashtanga, the form of physical yoga that is Ashtanga, and the concept, the principle of the Ashtanga, which is a mode of yoga, the mode with the eight paths of yoga. So it's been also described by Patanjali, like with all the yamas and the niyamas, like all this mental of non-violence, not stealing, not lying, not collecting, and abstinence and this kind of things. Um, and then it goes in the end gradually towards the same. Um, so it's about controlling your mind and controlling your body. It's the yoga of control in the end. But what says also in the Bhagavad Gita, if you do all this, but if you lack the bhakti part, if you don't have this devotion and this real deep connection with God, you will also not achieve the final. And in the end, the goal of the yoga, put quite literally from the book, is um, to escape the cycle of life and death, and not to be reborn again, but to go to the abode of God, and that your soul, which is the true you, is reunited with the king soul, which is the soul of God, and then you are really reunited, and you don't have to suffer again in the cycle of death and rebirth.
Hmm. And but like I think nowadays, if at least for myself, like when I heard the term Ashtanga yoga, I always kind of connected it to like a really like more physical type of yoga, more like power yoga, very, like in a way like a little bit harder. But yeah, do you often hear other people saying this nowadays? that they connect Ashtanga yoga with just like this physical yoga part?
Yeah, no, that's the thing. Because when you mention Ashtanga, it's now become so big that's really the physical practice. But the thing is that Ashtanga yoga, the physical practice of Ashtanga yoga, like power yoga, uh, power yoga is actually a variation on the Ashtanga yoga because it's just a set sequence. I think you have six or maybe even seven sequences, and it's always exactly the same sequence of the same poses in the same order. Um, the funny thing is that, and this is where can come back to what I was mentioning a bit earlier on, that the physical part of yoga is just a tiny part of what yoga is in the end as a whole. And Ashtanga yoga was actually a circus act. It was created by someone who owned the circus, and he just made these sequences, these poses to impress the public, and that was the whole idea behind it.
And
But now
it
it's
kind of
become a
worked.
really yes, definitely, and it's become this very structured and I myself, I have respect for all forms of yoga and everybody who's practicing anything. Uh, I find Ashtanga yoga, this physical part of the yoga, a bit too dogmatic for myself. It's really like it's this way and that's it. There is no other way. If you do something else, it's not what we're doing now. It's not Ashtanga. I find it a bit too harsh.
um, I'm just curious, what do you think about Kundalini yoga? Because I tried it out and I also had the feeling that it's kind of also disciplined in a way with all the techniques that you, at least I experienced it, that you do this, like a clear structure. Do you view it in a similar way or differently?
I don't know. I also don't have so much experience with Kundalini, and I think it's a bit the same experience as you had. The teacher, I found her a bit vague, and she was also telling stories during the class that were totally not related with what we're doing. She was a little bit airy, let's say, and I found the exercises that we did, especially with the hard breathing the whole time, being very intense. And sometimes I don't know. I'm like, I was feeling maybe something was happening, releasing the Kundalini Shakti, and but I was thinking maybe I'm just getting dizzy because of all the hard breathing and going up and down very fast. So I don't know. I don't really have a very clear idea about it. What I learned in my training is that, and the Kundalini in the end is a very advanced form of Hatha yoga. Where you go way deeper into the energy bodies and the subtle body. And yeah, I don't know. I think you have to have a very good and very, very experienced teacher that can bring this to somebody. And I think um, you already have to have a very, very serious basis in Hatha Yoga before you can really get actual benefits from a Kundalini practice. But again, I don't have so much experience with it, so I can't say so much about it.
Yeah, for me it's kind of similar. Like first time that I've tried it out, it was the same. Like, nah, the teacher. And then when I was in Leiden, I did it for I don't know, maybe 2-3 months. The teacher, didn't resonate too much with me, but I was just curious, and I was like, at least here's a teacher. It's kind of okay, and I've tried it out. And at this point, it was like almost a year ago, I also noticed that some of the techniques are, in a way, I don't know, quite potent or powerful. But in the end, I can't really say what it did or what. I don't really know. But then I also stopped at a certain point. But I think it also really makes sense to do it if you are quite experienced, if you are really serious about it. And yeah, if you have a good teacher, then it's, I think, could be very interesting.
Yeah, I think so too. But yeah, you really need to have you have to really be advanced in Hatha yoga, I think, and really master a few breathing techniques and be able to stay calm and be really aware of what is happening within yourself. Because, like I said, you can get really dizzy from it. I found it's like all this hard breathing and harsh movements that you do with dropping yourself to the floor and going up again while doing practicing the hard breathing. It was an experience, but I'm not ready to do it again at the moment.
Yeah, same. But I found it kind of interesting just to try it out. Maybe, I don't know, sometime in the future, if it just like happens, like maybe. Um, and the like other types of yoga or branches that are mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita was also, I think, Raja Yoga was one of them.
Yes, yes. The Raja Yoga is also where the Ashtanga system comes from in
Yeah,
the end.
with self-discipline and controlling like your thoughts through meditation and all those things, right? Yeah, I actually like this is what I've tried out in Leiden, and I I think like the teacher was also pretty old and very experienced, and like when I came into the room, I was like, this was kind of funny. I was actually a little bit not like really late, but like 1 minute before the class, and when I just came in, was a little bit just stressed. And when I saw the guy sitting there and he was like so, I don't know, he didn't say anything, but I could see that he was super, super quiet. And I was like, oh, I was so surprised. And after this lesson, I also came back. And the methods that he taught us were also really basic, very simple, like simple movements and breathing exercises. But apparently, it also worked out for me. So I also like this type of yoga was also kind of interesting.
Sounds really nice, actually.
But have you also tried out Raja yoga?
No, I didn't try Raja Yoga in itself. Just practicing, trying to really be more with the eightfold path of the Patanjali Sutra, the Yoga Sutras, and that's all part of the Raj Yoga, of course. And like I said, there's also these things about controlling your mind and creating good habits also for yourself, positive habits, and then all the breathing exercises, the pranayama and the asana is also all part of the Raj Yoga.
I feel like if you get a little bit more serious with it and just practice, like, or do your own kind of routine, whatever it is, I think, or at least I always had the feeling when I was reading through those branches that I was practicing a little bit of this, maybe a little bit of this, that it was not just this one thing.
Yeah, again, it's all connected. And when people ask me like, "Oh, do you do yoga?" Oh, come back. Ask me if I do yoga every day, and I'm like, actually, yeah, I do. There's always at least a moment in the day where I take to yeah, practice one of the things of yoga, and it doesn't mean that I roll out my mat every day, then I go for some salutations or a few warrior poses. Sometimes I just don't have time to do the physical part of yoga. I try to do that as much as possible, but usually it ends up being just a bit of a stretch session for the physical part. And then if I go jog for a round, for me, this is still yoga because then I know I'm focusing on my breath, I'm being very present, and I uh, don't desire anything at the moment. So it's practicing yoga in a way. And whenever I feel offended, if somebody bikes like crazy and I have to stop, even though I should have the right to go. But there's this frustration going up. That's very natural. I think many people have that. But instead of acting on that, I'm being aware of this sensation rising up and trying to let it dissolve instead of acting on it. And this is also practicing yoga finds. So yeah, practice yoga every day in a way or the other.
Yes, I think like this, like with just like when something comes up in daily life, it's like a really beautiful practice that actually everyone can do. I think probably also many people are doing it without even knowing that it's part of yoga or something.
Yes, exactly.
And to come back to the other types, I think then there's still this I don't know how to pronounce it, Jnana yoga, the
Yeah,
wisdom inquiry
Jnana
part.
yoga. Yes.
What do you think of this? Do you have any opinion or experiences?
Well, yeah. Well, again, my my experience and my opinion. I don't know if it's really what I form for myself, or if I'm just maybe sheepishly moving along with the Bhagavad Gita again. But the way it's explained really just makes a lot of sense to me, and especially with these forms of yoga, like the yoga of knowledge of, and it's important to read the scriptures so that you get a theoretical knowledge of it. But in the end, you can have the theory part really down, and you can also have lots of experience and practice your yoga. But in the end, if you really consider what the real goal of yoga is, in the end, to create this connection and be really liberated from the illusion of this material world, without the devotion and the faith that you could put in the divine, you're still just not there. But like also, yeah, again, it's still better than just to give up, to do like, oh, I don't believe in God, so instead of reading books and try to find a way, I'm just going to give up and do nothing, and doing something is always better than nothing.
Yeah, yeah. I actually also figured out for myself that it doesn't matter what type of yoga or whatever practice someone has. Like it really depends on how serious I take it and how I don't know how focused I am like doing this practice, because I remember having days where I'm like, I know I should do it and I also do it, but then I catch myself so often like I'm not really there. Or for instance, if I just like do some inquiry or when I meditate and ask myself, for instance, who am I? It's like feel like nothing, like is going on. And then other times when I'm more serious or when I feel like just like naturally like just sitting down, or I don't take my cushion or anything, just like on the couch and doing the same thing, or more happens and it's completely different. It's I don't know, like so it often just depends on how I'm doing my practice, and I can also see myself. It's still like fluctuating, but in comparison, when I what I've did, let's say 2 years ago, I've did the same practice, but when I do it now, it's again like a different thing. Although I actually ask the same question or do the same method.
Yes, that's also, yeah, the big question, of course. Who am I? Are you this name? Are you this physical body? Are you the son? Are you the brother? Are you the employee, the student, whatever, or not? And I think that's also something that's being put very clearly in the Bhagavad Gita, and the mistake we make is to really identify with our physical body and all the labels we've been put on uh, since our birth, really, starting with the name and having parents and having all this physical attachment. And there's also this saying that says we think we're a body who has a spiritual experience, but in the end, we are a soul having a physical experience. It's also something that I find remarkable.
Yes, I also know this quote. It's a really nice one. It like puts things in a different perspective. Like, and those quotes always help me to just like don't take life too seriously, not trying to organize or to be too controlling. Sometimes just to see, yeah, what is unfolding, what is getting like, what is happening, instead of like, oh no, I need to do this and that and organize my studies and my job and all those things.
Yes, and again, it also comes down to the karma yoga. If you don't have this realization yet of being this spiritual entity or as having a physical experience, well, you better take care of your physical stuff, like your study and your work, because if you also don't have that, I always think that's easier to have a work which would give you a little bit of material comfort in the end. You will probably have more space to then think about spiritual matters than if you are living on the street and have to fight for your food every day. That would probably not leave so much space to meditate or to find some peace of mind.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree on this one. Um, right now, I'm actually also pretty happy about my job because I'm going to become a therapist. And right now, I'm working as a clinical psychologist, and even there, I can every time when I have a client coming, I can just practice. I don't know, like just like actively listening, paying attention, like being there. It's like also nice as a practice, just in a different way, not on the yoga mat, but yeah, it's kind of nice.
Yeah. Congratulations, by the way, on your job.
Yeah, it's actually right now it's pretty interesting because I work in a forensic clinic, although I never wanted to go into the setting, but it just happened because also money wise and all those things. And it's kind of interesting to work with people who committed a crime, but still are like under psychological, let's say like some kind of disorders or something, or drugs, whatever. And it's kind of interesting just to work with this group of people. At the end of the day, I just, every time I figure out it's just normal people. But when people are coming to me and asking me, how is it? And, oh, is it not crazy to work with someone who, I don't know, killed someone, or I don't know, is hearing voices, or like, I don't know, or raped a child, or killed my mother, I don't know. I'm like, yeah, it's super interesting, and it's also strange, but at the end of the day, it's just, I don't know, a human being.
That's it, yeah. That's it. And yeah, I think it's also there's also your environment and how you react to it and how it makes you think, but also sometimes just simply how the chemicals in your in your brain are are dosed. And some people will have uh, sometimes less barriers. I think in the end we are all capable of horrible things, and sometimes there's this series also I think called the Inside Man, and where it explains clearly all we all have the ability to be a murderer. All it takes is a bad day, and sometimes you can just end someone's life. And I think, of course, it's we can't have everybody running around and killing each other in the street, but I think sometimes, and especially in incarceration, that somebody has really psychological issues that uh, not being taken care of is also just inhuman in the end.
Yeah, and I think with most of at least my patients that I've taken care of, almost every one of them experienced that didn't have a nice childhood, or like if they beaten someone, raped someone, I don't know, most likely the same thing happened to them when they were younger. It's like, yeah, like once you like go through the history of the people, it doesn't really surprise me anymore how this all turned out, even if it's kind of yeah, quite shocking, but still, like, I'm like, no, it makes a lot of sense to me how this all turned out to be.
I can imagine must be a relief for you to be able to do a bit of meditation and some yoga to clear your head after a whole day of work if you have to constantly face this kind of things every day. Must not be too easy.
Yeah, it's yeah, I was also thinking about maybe doing some like basic meditation practices there with some of the clients. It's also kind of interesting. But so far I'm managing it. It's just like I feel like interesting to interact with those people and just, yeah, like ask those questions and try to work with them together. Um, but I would quickly come back to the Bhagavad Gita for last time. I think the one type of yoga was still left. I'm not sure if it is it Tantra yoga, or is this not one of the ones?
I'm not sure. I don't think Tantra
Because we had
is.
Karma, Bhakti, Ashtanga, which goes into
Yeah,
also a little bit Hatha, then the
yeah, the
Jnana,
right
Raja
yoga.
Yoga.
Yeah, the Bhakti yoga, and then there's yeah, Sanyas yoga, I think.
The one
And
that
there's
you mentioned before already.
yes, the part where you are so advanced on your karma yoga that you really get really this connection with God, and that where you are kind of allowed to let go of your worldly duties to really spend your whole time meditating and focusing on God, and where it sometimes very often goes wrong when people take this step a little bit too early and really get lost on the way.
Yeah, I feel like as long, even I just see them myself, as long as I see like I have some attachments, like some like strong desires, just wanting to do this or not wanting that this happens. I know, even if my mind's telling me, oh yeah, it would be nice to just, I don't know, go to India for a year or something or longer time. I'm like, yeah, I think I can still work on my own here in the daily life for now. I think that's enough for now.
Yes, yes, I think so too. And I mean, yeah, and it's like I believe I also have never been to India yet. I'm planning on sometime, maybe not very soon, but one day, why not? But I also am convinced that what you cannot find here, you will also not find in India.
Yeah, it's the ego playing out a nice story again.
Yes.
I actually also had one quote from your Instagram account that I've written down. I'm just going to read it out because it kind of connects to what we've also talked about. And if there's something that comes into your mind about this little text, you can just comment on it. I think it was the picture where you were in a scorpion pose. I'm not sure, but I just copied the text, and you wrote, "Nowadays, what we refer to as yoga in the West is a physical practice that may or may not have positive effects on how we feel mentally too. But this is only a very tiny part of a complete yoga practice. Of course, it's important to be fit, but maybe we've put too much emphasis on this. In order to create a sustainable practice and get the true benefits of yoga, one should start with the practice of yama, treat others well, and niyama, self-discipline. Again, asana, the yoga posture, is definitely a great way to keep your body healthy. But to get this deeper connection, the foundation is being a kinder and more compassionate and self-loving person."
I will still stand by this.
I think it was 1 or 2 years, at least 1 year ago, a long time. But I stumbled over this one. I was like, let me just read this to you.
Yeah, I think that kind of sums up what we've been talking about today.
Okay, when we just look back what we've talked about so far, is there still anything coming up in you where you say, oh, I would still like to add this, or maybe this was not entirely clear, or anything?
No, I think kind of rounded up, and yeah, if anybody who is interested into that, I would definitely advise um, to read the Bhagavad Gita, of course. And I remember now the name of the person or the organization where I get the daily email with the verse of the Bhagavad Gita is called Swami Mukundananda, and is also an Indian practitioner based, I think they're in Dallas, in Texas. And they have this big ashram living with a lot of people, and he's publishing different books and also a whole commentary on the Bhagavad Gita. And the way he explains it, because I read a couple of other commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita, but sometimes uh, it can be, at least for me, even more confusing than the actual text. But I find that Swami Mukundananda really can give good examples. That's also where I got the story with the two brothers going to the lecture. And he really always make comparisons that are really tangible, I find, and it makes it very clear also. So if somebody is interested in Bhagavad Gita, I think that's a good way to read this commentary in parallel as well.
Yeah, and they have a website, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
If you can send me the link, then I can just put it in the video description, when the people that are interested in it can just check it out. I would also put your Instagram link in the video description. So if people want to check out your profile, your pictures, what you're doing, I think most of the stuff is on your Instagram account, right? Or do you have anything else?
No, I think that's all about everything I have that where I put myself out there with nowadays.
Okay. I think, yeah, most people are on Instagram, so that's perfect if they kind of want to connect with you, or just want to scroll through your profile just to see what kind of things you were posting. Okay. Nice. Then I would slowly come to an end. And what I also, it just came into my mind right now, wanted to say is what I always enjoyed about yoga, or especially when I had your classes, was that I actually, I don't know, I always found like yoga is in a way also a little bit manipulative, but not in a bad way. But I've learned like so much um, there, and enjoyed the classes so much, but you never really, said anything like in words as a teaching or something, but just through this 1.5 hours, how long it was like I've learned so much. And sometimes I had teachers in psychology or other people like talking so much, and I feel like I didn't get anything out of it. This is what I really enjoyed about your classes.
Yeah, that's why we start with a headstand. Puts you in the mood.
Okay. And every time when I have an interview, I always let my guests finish the episode, because in the end, it's about their spiritual practice, their path, their life, however you want to call it. And I always, this last question is the same. So if you have any message to all the people out there who are seeking, either if it's something positive, spiritual, whatever it is, what would your message be for that person?
Yeah, just like that, I would say, like, you know, just be kind to yourself. be kind to others. And I think this is the best point to start. When if we get rid of selfishness, eventually, when everybody wants the best for others, I think that the world would be a way nicer place to live in also.
Yeah, that's nice. And I had the experience that it always came back to me when I did something good to others.
That's the way it goes, and if you cannot expect people to change if you don't change yourself, or if you don't do something, you can expect people to do it, or do it instead of you or for you. That's how it works.
Okay, Alexandra. Thank you so much for being here. I really enjoyed the interview with you. And
Yeah, it was a pleasure.
yeah, enjoy your day. And also to all the people who are still listening, I hope you have a great day. My name is Till, and this is Till Talk.